Now we're going to be talking about the family dynamics of a design-centered brand. I'd like to start a little bit with the heritage and to ask Angela, how do you maintain the traditional aspects of the brand while introducing modern and new elements?
You know, I think that I never had fear to go ahead because I'm a person who looks forward. I never look back. I always look forward. I have a very precise memory of the archive in my memory since I'm, I think, 4 or 5 years old. I remember looks, I remember details, I remember everything. If ever I need something from, I don't do research in the archives. If ever I need something, I can date it exactly. Wow. But the big thing is that for me, my parents, of course, they had a great invention. They invented a style which is something very rare, even in fashion. And but the thing is that they were revolutionary. They were inventor, and they would experiment every moment. And so for me, Missoni had always been a big world where I can incorporate everything. I think it's Missoni.
Have your ways of experimenting changed?
No, but yes, no, yes, of course. The way we experimented changed.
I mean,
you go on and changing, and you go on. I had done enormous experiment with the certain classic texture to get out different pattern. Yes, that's what I guess is been one of my skills also, besides bringing the clothes to life and fashion being contemporary. Yes. But even if I have to introduce new pattern, new design, new prints, I'm not fear as much as I feel them, Missoni. But I remember, like the first collection, it was a moment at the beginning of the 90s where Missoni was became a classic. It was a bit more repetitive. And I think that at the time when Rosita asked me to go to take over the collection because she thought I was doing something that was Missoni for her. And it's because she felt trapped in a zigzag cage and they were asking her, the commercial side.
I was tired.
Yeah, she was
tired. I was tired.
And I'm warm, excuse me.
My way of life didn't correspond anymore to fashion. I felt if you work in fashion, I was never very mundane, but I went to Paris, I went to London, I went to the right places, and I met the right people, young editors, and I was starting to live back and to stay more at home, to enjoy my house and my family. I felt always more trapped by the commercial side. They were directing me. I needed help to get, so Angela was, she asked the family and her brothers if she wanted to do a collection by herself. And she did 4 collections,
four, 5, 6 at the end.
4 or 5 collections. Yeah. Mainly solid, to prove that she was able to handle a whole collection by herself.
Margherita 5 seasons, 1 collection. I think that was the people were laughing.
5 seasons.
5 seasons.
5 seasons. Yes.
So yeah, because I was going to ask if it was always part of the family plan that Angela would come in.
No.
And then I was telling you, this is the way I said, I would like to dress, but I felt compelled by I didn't want to fight against all the commercial people and things, and I didn't have any more energy to fight. I am a fighter still, but at that moment, for me, it was too much.
I had energy enough.
I think it is about energy a lot of the time.
But the cute thing is that when I started, and I felt like they would say, what are you doing? And I said, I'm cleaning, I'm fixing, I'm cleaning, I'm fixing. So at the time, I think the first collection, which I thought it was absolutely Missoni because it had precise reference in my mind, somebody from the commercial side would tell me, that's not enough Missoni. But Rosita thought it was absolutely Missoni, right? So I always thought,
so
I know what is Missoni.
Did you have the final
Because I
word?
only maybe was putting
I
only
was
3
wearing
colors
it.
together instead of putting 25 colors together in the same garment. So that's why I'm telling you I was cleaning. Yeah.
I think, you know, there's a Missoni aesthetic, and part of that aesthetic became iconic. And so the Missoni world is much bigger than that, than just that. But that's the most iconic thing and what they always want, right? So it's not that we have to work thinking of what is Missoni, because that's our aesthetic. So basically, if we introduce something, we don't have to make sure that it's Missoni enough. It's just that the way we see the world is with those Missoni eyes, you know. We are Missoni. It's not that we just work for Missoni.
And also,
The Missoni eyes, like that.
it's like, I always thought Missoni, it's like a language, and we have a very large, articulated vocabulary. And but a language, not to become a dead language, you will introduce new world. You will introduce new things,
Structures.
right? Structures.
Well,
yeah.
had they started today, they probably wouldn't have done the exact same thing. You know, they would have had the same taste, but in a different time. They probably would have done different things.
How did you get roped in? Was that also?
How did you get trapped in?
No, not trapped, not trapped.
It's like a very subtle mobbing, you know. No, I have to say they were very smart with me, because they really let me go through my path. And when I came back, it was when I chose to come back, because I felt I wanted to be there. It's, you know, it's a whole big knot. It's difficult to separate the company from the family in my mind. Now still, back it was even harder. And it's not just a company, you know, like you feel like it really belongs to you. Cutting that out, it would have been cutting out a big part of my life. It's like a person to me, you know.
It also seems like some of your passions and interests, I mean, they're there. You didn't have to make this up.
For sure. But I kind of ran away from that. I had other passions that I chose to pursue, because I kind of like didn't really know if I even existed as a, you know, person on my own outside of the big family and the Missoni reign. Then, you know, you get more comfortable with yourself, you grow up, you're a more complete person, and you have an easier time dealing with that.
Maybe I should just clarify, if not everybody knows, but Rosita, who was the founder of the company with her husband Tai, or Ottavio, an inventor of the Missoni style, and Rosita is now creative director of Missoni Home. Angela has been the creative director since 1996, and Margherita has been the accessories designer since 2010, also has been and still is the face of Missoni perfume,
Basically.
and Missoni in general.
The main face of Missoni, yes.
Yeah,
Kind of ambassador.
They asked me to sort of jump into the future, so why not? And just to find out what the future plans are, sort of in terms of design, collaborations, explorations, the hotel group. It's a lot, so let's, let's try the first one.
Let's go short in the next month. So next year, Missoni will be
60.
We'll have its 60th, not the 60th, the 60th anniversary, which will correspond also 60 years of the company, 60 years of marriage for my parents, 30th anniversary of Margherita. It's going to be big here. And so we have many plans. We're going to finally have an e-commerce site. We are redoing the website. We are rethinking the shops. So the Milan shop will open in April, and I'm working on that with Patricio Chiola. whom we have a lot of threads in common, I think. And then we're working also finally on a book, because there's not a real book on the Missoni history and legacy, and yes, many things.
Fashion these days is a never-ending project, and multifaceted project. Do you recognize Missoni every step of the way these days? Has it changed a great deal for you?
Not really, no.
Yeah.
I live daily there. I never quit the factory. When
she sleeps there, huh? Sleep there, yeah.
Not in the factory, but not far from it. But you know, it's a passion. I don't know how when we started, we needed to make our living. So I was coming from a family who was totally involved in fabrics. My grandparents, they had embroidery machine. They used to make fabrics which were exported in the Far East, in those in all the Mediterranean areas. When there was the big crisis in '29, I was not yet born, but there was, they couldn't export anymore. So my grandma decided, she was cutting shapes from those embroidered yarns. And she made kimonos and pajamas and kind of things for ladies' wear. And then she tried also to cut some jackets. But she was not a pattern cutter. And my father, I'm talking about my my mother's family, my grandparents, and my father was the agent of the company, and he said, you know, in Stresa, which is still a very nice place on the lake, they had a very nice customer, and they said, they suggested that we deliver the jacket. They loved embroideries, but we should deliver them without setting in the sleeves. They will set in so you know that to set in a sleeve, who knows pattern cutting, is what makes the garment.
Yeah.
It holds everything. So my grandma, she was quite quick, and she understood. She just wanted to help my grandfather. And so she found a very nice pattern cutter in Milan. She was a dressmaker in Milan, and who was the niece of her neighbor, and she had problems. I don't know. She offered this lady to come to the country. We live 40 miles from Milan. To come and do some pattern cutting. And she said, I will come at one condition. She asked a few days, of course, to answer. Then she said, I have a husband. And my grandma said, your husband is an accountant, so we can have a job in the company. This was very easy. And so she offered a place where they could live, in a very nice little villa next to the factory. And then she said, one very important question. I want to come and receive, at one condition, I want to receive all the fashion magazine of the world. So that's, I grew up cutting out fashion magazine. That was my school. Besides the dyeing factory, where I saw dyeing hanks of yarns to make embroideries, shawl, fringes, all that kind of fascinating world. I'm talking of the early 30s. I was born in 31. So It was the moment ladies were going to the beach wearing embroidered pajamas and these beautiful jackets that they were very well cut out afterwards, that we had a good pattern cutter.
So it's been a family business pre-Missoni.
Absolutely, but that has been my field. So I grew up there, and then I met my husband. My husband comes from a totally different field. He is born in a beautiful city of Dubrovnik, which it was not Italian, but he was born there with an Italian passport. And then they moved to Zadar. Anyway, he was, when he was 22, he was in the army.
Yeah.
And he was sent to Egypt. He was prisoner at El Alamein during the war, and he was guest of the King of England. He says he was guest of the King of England
for
4 years. Then he came back, and he started with a friend of his a small job to make.
Because he was an athlete.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, yeah, he's an Olympic athlete. An Olympic athlete.
Yes. At that time.
Since 16.
Sorry.
He'd kill you.
I
He would
was
kill you.
just I lost the thread of the of the knitting, but yes, he was. Well, of course, he was a student in Berlin. I think he was.
Or in
Vienna.
No, in Vienna
he was, when he was 18 years old, he was world champion, world champion of 400 meters. Anyway, he was always he was a great promise, but he skipped 2 Olympics, which were not happening during the war. And then he was prisoner. He came back in 46. He was sent back 1 year and 8 months after the war was finished. And anyway, he could still train, and in 48 he was at the Olympic Games. He could still, and he was finalist. It happened that I saw him the very first day. I was in English college, in English boarding house. And our sisters, they were Swiss sisters, very brilliant. They took us for 1 day to the Olympics, and in very cheap seats, but they were next to the changing rooms of the athletes. So that day, Ottavio Missoni was running his heath, and he won his heath. So, and we could see him. He was very handsome. He had a fantastic style. Well, anyway.
Needless to say, they got married soon after.
But
the company was founded.
She was 16.
Oh, I didn't realize you were that young.
I was 16, and when I knew that then I had the opportunity to meet him some week after, and we were invited by his president to Brighton. We went to Brighton for the day. And I heard he was 27, and I was 16. For me, 27 was Methuselah. I said, oh, I will never reach. Anyway, when I really saw him not as an athlete, but as a man, he was coming out in Piccadilly Circus. He was coming out of the underground and wearing the uniform of a beautiful blue, royal blue, which was the color of the national team, with a coat of armor, a beautiful double-breasted jacket, very elegant gray, very flannel trousers, very. And then later on, we realized that in Piccadilly Circus there is a column. And on top of the column, there is a Cupid. So that's what happened. Oh. The Cupid was...
But you lost the thread again.
I lost the thread again.
Ty started to do...
Ty went back to
when he came back from the war, he started to do
track and field suits.
To do track suits
track and field suits. Knitted
for the Italian national
because come si dice? Oh, Madonna, il suo...
That was the fabric, though.
Non importa.
No.
Comincia.
Anyway,
Yeah.
well, a friend of his had 2 knitting machines in Trieste. So in Trieste is not it's a place where you can make a ship, but it was very difficult to make sweaters. But anyway, this friend had bought 2 knitting machines to make his mother and aunt work. And then he got fascinated by this knitting thing, and he started, since he was the responsible of the athletic team in Italy, and they had the Olympic Games in their mind, so he started making jumpsuits, fully fashioned, beautiful. They were the first one to put zips in the trousers, because, you know, they have nails under the shoes. And to think about what a jumpsuit can be, a tracksuit can.
I'm going to jump as far. That is the pre-Missoni
So
era.
that's what when we came here when married, we had to make a living from his work and my experience, and of course I loved. I mean, the idea of knits was fantastic, and so we started making little sweaters for Bicchi.
Yeah.
Bicchi was the couture house in Milan who was dressing Maria Callas. Maria Callas was the diva of
the time.
Yeah.
And so I started making little sweaters. And we were always doing track and field suits. But then
it jumped. Daniel jumped to the Rochelle machine, and
exactly.
the zigzag was born, and Missoni moved on and on and on, became international, which in a way leads me to a question of I mean, here you are today, Italy. Do you see yourselves as an Italian company, or do you see yourselves as a global company, or how does that?
No, absolutely, we are an Italian company,
yeah,
there's no doubt.
that functions globally.
Decided that there's a global image, which we still produce for the mainline. Everything is produced in Italy, and not only it's produced in north of Italy. So,
I mean, is that
but
possible
not only
still?
that, I think that also we are perceived as an Italian company. You know, the way the structure is, the way the whole family works in, it still belongs to the family. These are all real elements, but are at the same time, you know, marketing elements that work for the brand. When people want to sit at lunch with us, basically, and it's true. So we're a very Italian company.
We go home for lunch. Yes, we all go home. But the most important thing is that when my father and my mother decided to build, it was the moment for them to build their own factory. So they were living in this small city near Milan, but at that point they had to build the factory. And they decided to build it in a place they would have loved to live. Yeah. So that was a very important move
to spend
for
our
them.
Weekends.
Exactly, the place where they would love to spend the weekend, right? So then they built the house after. But that really gave them an easy life, a pleasant life. And it also gave us, I think that was the bigger gift I got from my parents. I mean, to learn the beauty of the country, so the city, 45 minutes, Milan, so very easy. You can go there for dinner whenever you want. Mostly you say, why do I have to go? Fine here. But anyway, whatever you need is there. But to live in a place, it was in this beautiful place where as soon as I moved out of home, I went to my own house, and it was very close by. I grew my children there. It makes it easy. It makes it a nice, easy life to work and live.
It's sort of interesting.
I work a lot, even growing my children, right? So,
yeah. But it's interesting because I think most of us would perceive Missoni as a very urban brand, and yet it has its roots in the countryside. And I mean, I know other people who work.
Because we are not country people.
What are you?
No, I don't know.
I'm definitely a country girl.
Yeah?
I'm definitely a country girl.
No, she's back. She's a country
You're
girl.
back to being.
Yeah.
But you have your apartment in Milano too.
Yeah, but
Oh, but I just heard you bought
we're
land in the country. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, oh, a house.
when
But
you-
you've built a hotel.
You know, I used to ask my mom to go on holiday, at least for holiday in cities. I used to like be desperate to see some like cars and.
No, she would say,
and
can we go in a place where there's some lights, please?
I was,
Oh God, I'm feeling myself called to ask a question that I've been ashamed that I asked this question for so many years to you too when I used to go to Milan. Where do you get your inspiration? But at this point, I'm interested. Where does it come from?
I think it comes from basically everything you see. I know that if I have a quality, it's my eyes. And I notice everything, and I'm a very detailed person, and I see. So basically,
But where do you
I'm
see?
like a kind of computer, and then I get all things inside, and all of a sudden you realize that you're looking for certain things, and then you get a package like it, you translate it in the job you do, into an inspiration to start a new collection, to start new weaving, or to start.
Yeah, how
new-
hands-on is it? Because I mean, with you two people in the beginning, it was very hands-on. It was about
It's
seeing what this machine
100%.
could do.
100% hands-on.
still-
You still start from the color card, deciding every seasonal color card, which are 36 color per season, and to declinate the palette of the different 3-4 palettes every season. And because you have to do your fabric, we work as fabric supplier and then as fashion designer. So we work a year ahead.
a year
It's-
ahead of the year ahead.
Yes, a year ahead of the moment the collection would be on stage, instead of working 6 months ahead like other designer.
We were talking about this yesterday at dinner, and just about Margherita feels that we're on the cusp of a major change in how the fashion business works, or at least we're hoping. Because the schedule, the rhythm has just
I just
gone
think,
completely crazy.
you know, when they started, there weren't shows. You know, it's a fairly new business, at least ready to wear is, and it grew exponentially. There was a lot of space in the market because there wasn't anything, so there was space for new brands to flourish and develop. And nowadays, we are in a place where there's more offer than demand, and the market is kind of satirized. Most of the most talented designers of our time has worked or do work for brands that already existed. They haven't started their own. The way we shop has completely changed. I think that the 4 collections that we now have are a bit anachronistic. Editors and buyers can't bear traveling so much. You have all the fashion weeks, always more. You start showing pre-collections in the most random places because you need a market there. So I definitely think that it will change. Right now, the structure doesn't fit the business anymore.
How does Missoni cope with that?
We are in edge thinking. Always thinking ahead.
Well,
thinking. Just
No,
We
I
need to
think
always
we
think-
were privileged at
Yeah.
that moment because we were free to experiment, you know. And we had this fantastic, in our hands, knitting. And it was a moment that knitting could express. It was very quick to make our fabrics. And that's why we started with stripes, because our machine could only do stripes. But my husband is a great, I love color, and he is a great colorist, so we started.
You know what? It's something that I think it's really important. That it's like when you talk about design, patrimony, and when you were saying before, how do you move forward? You know, and I think key element of the brand, even more than color, cheerfulness, knit, all these things that are very important and relevant to us, they were risk takers. You know, Missoni wasn't something pleasant when we started, and
it wasn't basic.
It wasn't. People didn't, you know, it wasn't something immediately accepted. Had they started today, they wouldn't have done that. You know, today it's completely accepted seeing this. In 1953, it was completely crazy. So I think that's the most important element in our brand that we should always think of.
And I'm a
you know, and pret-à-porter, as we said, ready-to-wear did not exist. They did something risky. They didn't start a haute couture line. They started selling sweaters, you know.
I'm just wondering what the new risks could be.
But the new risk is that also, think about it, 60 years, okay, but starting from the volunteer of my father, the company never grew exponentially. My father never wanted, he's a free spirit, he's always been free. She's more like a builder, so she builds sustenance. Not that she has incredible, outrageous need, but she builds. And my father, he doesn't want to own a thing, right? So he doesn't want to own a company, he doesn't want to own a house, he doesn't want to, he always talks about your mom's houses, right? Okay, because she has 3 houses. Okay, so totally free spirit, doesn't really feel comfortable with many responsibilities. So, which handled to the fact that in the 70s, when the moment they could have grown, he was refusing order. He was cutting orders when they were too big. He was refusing licensing, telling her, and she was, oh, they offer us that. She was kind of, they offer, and he would answer her,
I'm going to throw a bomb.
What? No, why? Rosita, you sure you want to work more? Why do you want to gain more money if you won't have time for spend it? Okay, so that
Smart
was
man.
Okay. So think about that. With those bases, Missoni never really grew exponentially, even though having such a strong style, remain a small company, and still today we are kind of miraculous thing, I think, because we managed to have a very strong image and still have an impact on the fashion world, even being a little thing compared to all the massive muscle brand that came out in the past 15 years. And how do you cope with that? I don't know. But basically, I know that I'm a risk taker too. And I have to invent all the time, invent campaigns that makes, even though I cannot buy 1,000 pages on the magazine, I have always to push my head so that even if I do 5 pages, those 5 pages spread around the world because people are going to talk about those pages, right? Which is actually supposed to be in every kind of advertising. But anyway.
It doesn't always work, but it's supposed to work.
The need makes me, and luckily till now, I succeed. Luckily, I could do the campaign with all the family. Of course, people said I didn't spend much money. In fact, it was true. But, of course, I have a good-looking family, right? And in the same moment, I could tell people that it was a moment for me of big change in fashion. I was tired of all, even though I discovered Matt and Marcus, because another work is that you have to be a talent scout all the time, because
Especially
I can work
if you don't have the
with big, if you don't have budget, you can work with big photographers, so you always have to be ahead and try to scout them. But I thought I was tired of all this perfection image, which became something excessive. I thought it started to look wrong, and I wanted to have a campaign that could tell what was the essence of Missoni, what was the value of Missoni, it was time to talk about the heart, about feelings, and about a history, about something which was not only a marketing project, it was real product. We were real, we were doing a real craft, we were doing fashion, but we had many other values, and I think this campaign had such an impact anyway in the fashion world that all of a sudden really,
Yeah, it
there was a
resonated
turning
and-
page.
And it's gonna pop, you know, in a magazine full of the same images. If you do, and even if you only have one page, which is totally different, it stands out.
And then, of course, today with the web,
Yeah.
it's
Next
a
question.
totally different discussion. This leads the way. Even this kind of communication can spread in a second. So,
What's the what? Yeah,
I think working within boundaries, such as having a smaller budget than your competitors, it's, you know, it's a disadvantage, but it's also an advantage because you force yourself, you're forced to think out of the box
Right.
and find other ways,
there's
and
no
you're
other
more
way.
creative. It's true.
No, I think it's true too. I mean, where are you going? So digitally, you said you're going to get into e-commerce. You're fixing your website, etc. But do you feel who's analog, who's digital in this family team?
No,
You're
they are
you're
both
the
very
digital generation. Is there?
But also
Where do you
Angela.
see it going?
I try, but
Well, she's amazing, actually.
yes,
She
we
she
bought
does
her an iPad 2 years ago, and now an iPhone, and she's like, she's
She
into
reads
it.
3 newspapers on the iPad. She writes and she has complete like iPad use.
yes, but
Let's
I
go
have
to-
I have to force myself.
no, well, some of
sometimes it's
us-
easier to take up the phone and ask my secretary to do it instead of me. I try to tape on but anyway,
I mean, I'm wondering
I'm proud
how
of what I'm
you.
doing.
Where do you all fit in the Missoni archives? If you get to raid,
No, we fit-
where are your
come si
favorite?
chiama? Il Museo delle Cere.
The what?
Madame Tussauds.
Madame
We fit
Tussauds.
not in the archives. Sooner or later, we're going to have you all in Madame Tussauds.
But what are your favorite parts? Are there different Missonis that each of you love most?
In the archive,
Yeah.
the piece that we
Yeah.
most love,
Or the kinds of things you
the
most
kinds
love?
of things
I
Is
grew
from
there?
our
from Missoni,
archives.
from the Missoni world.
I mean, if I were going to dress the three of you in Missoni, what would I see? How different would it be? I mean,
I think
Very
we
different.
have the same taste but different styles. There wouldn't be something that I think it's beautiful and they think it's just terrible.
but you might wear it differently.
Also,
Yeah, but I might wear it.
also in
I
our
might wear it and they
homes,
might not.
We are very similar. No, of course, generations count, but
But I think there is an education to taste. Very funny enough, but I think that fashion goes down to the feminine gene. Men are not interested in fashion at all.
In our family.
Oh,
In our
yeah,
family.
I was gonna
look
no,
here,
no,
is
no,
that
no, no,
true?
no, no, in our family. In our family.
My husband still says that fashion is not important. Without fashion, we wouldn't have
no, today.
existed.
Yeah, but you needed your machines,
but
and he
What
was
is our
fiddling with the
fashion? No, but
machines.
not
He just
important.
likes.
But he likes to say.
He
likes
just
to
likes
make-
to get a reaction.
And he does, apparently.
And he does.
Someone passed me a little question they thought would be fun to ask you, and that was your first memory of fashion. Or when did fashion become important for you? Or when did it become
You
a
mean
passion?
for me?
Yeah.
Always. Always.
Always.
I was a
Yeah, you were
child.
born into it, you said, and with those magazines.
I was a child. I was cutting. I mean, I grew up with, for me, Sonia Delaunay was the artist, was the fashion, was the pattern cutter. I mean, she was my icon for, since I was, I think, before thinking of my own fashion. So, and she was so modern, and she was, so as soon as I could, I was trying to follow that experience. And she did everything, and now I am in the home business, because it's when you, and I think this might be of most of fashion people, that you bring them into the house. I always dressed my house my homes with my fabrics, even if they were not made to be for upholstery or things. Because for me, it's a whole world. It's a way of thinking. It's a way of life.
And
so I
that's
was very pleased when it came to make. I was in charge of following the hotel. We have two now.
Are there any new ones?
At present, we have one in Edinburgh, opened 3 years
Il
ago,
terzo dove aprirà?
and one in Kuwait
Kuwait.
City.
Can we expect
which
another?
Is, and we have 3 or 4 studies for the moment. In this moment of crisis doesn't help, but we have Turkey, we have Mauritius, which is a very nice project. Che cosa?
No, no.
I've gotten
Oman, it's another one. They are all there. They are
So
ready.
we
The project we need to start. I mean, people have to put the money for them, but hopefully they will move on.
You don't
but
have
the
that
one
much.
open, they do very well. Edinburgh, it's a jewel. It's a very nice hotel, and it really corresponds to.
I think I've been asked to sort of. I'd like to open it up to the audience. If you have questions, please. Otherwise, we'll go back to talking. But I open it to you first.
No curiosity.
No?
No curiosity.
All right, so let's.
Yes, one there.
Good.
Up there.
I can't see anything, so you guys are.
I'm curious.
Okay.
I mean, 3 women, mother, grandmother, and daughter. How do you work together? I mean, there are some points, I'm sure, where you get a fight or we have like different. No?
We fight with the man of the family.
Thank you.
We make our strength together.
How useful.
Honestly, I think that I grew with a lot of freedom from my mother and my father. Really, I was never forced to do this job. I choose to do this job. And I think I've done the same with Margherita. I always felt supported by my parents, always. Even in the most, maybe there are some hard moments. Maybe I don't have exactly the same vision as my brother sometimes. But sometimes, even if you have other partner of business, you might not have the same vision. So I don't think it's nothing. But the fact that it's family, it forces you to stay, to try till the last moment to find a solution to problems. The same. I think we've done with Margherita.
No, even before starting to work in the company, you really lived the company. We really all are based and grew up within a few hundred meters from where the company is. So that was our hangout place. After school, we just go there and be in the atelier where they were working, playing with pieces of fabrics and taking pictures with models. And, it's an amazing playground for a child. So there's not really a moment where a big switch when you start working. Of course you're working, but the relationship with your family members in the company, you were already there. I mean, your mother would shout at you as a child as well if you did something wrong, and maybe she would do it again when you're growing up because you have a different relationship than other colleagues. It's just normal fight.
It feels very Italian.
It's fun enough.
Yeah, certainly.
But really, only out of nine children, mine and my brother, only 2 are very passionate about fashion, which is Margherita and Teresa. My daughters are passionate about fashion.
I wanted to know what else you're passionate about. That brings up the next question, because it's
we
clear.
are all going to flea market tomorrow morning.
Okay, okay. We'll work that out.
That's the one when you talk about inspirations. Oh, I got so many inspirations from flea markets.
And I know vegetable markets too. We've talked about
markets, of course,
Rosita's a brilliant cook.
Orchard.
enjoy many things together. To be around, to be together, to have a weekend together. It's we really enjoy when we are together for a weekend because we know we enjoy doing same things, basically.
Well,
and it could be we can go to theater, we can go to an arts, we can go to.
Sorry,
we have a question.
Number 10, yeah. To jump back from the family stories to a question that I find interesting when you talked about times and cycles. You kind of complained or talked about the problem of accelerating fashion cycles and seasons, and they all get faster and faster. At the same time, you talk about Missoni Home, which is all about stability and creating a kind of a timelessness or a home that actually gives you a balance. Is there a chance that actually you turn this around and fashion becomes somehow a product that you produce every year, they're classics, and that's becoming kind of a stable line while actually housing or home becomes kind of a cycle and changes and becomes a temporary idea of flexibility?
I think that we are on that moment where we might. Do you want to answer? Margherita's the future, so let's ask Margherita.
No, I personally think the way fashion is moving, it's moving towards a lot of small capsule collections. It's already kind of that way. If you go into shops, already anyone that works in a fashion boutique knows the difference between a catwalk piece and a non-catwalk piece. So already catwalk is something different. It's not your old collections. Then there are other brands that, for example, Balenciaga has different tags for silk, knit, little black dress, editions. The high street market is delivering new things every month. To bring people in the store, you need to have always different things. So I think that will be the direction. I think there will always be a fast-paced collection, because that's what fashion is at the end of the day. It's the fastest symptoms of the time we live in. I think it's the fastest artistic expression. So that's very important. Otherwise, you're just making clothes. But I also think that that's only one part of the business, which is composed of many other things. And you will for sure have classics or timeless pieces, elegant, but not necessarily in fashion.
But that's the big success. I mean, something really changed in the past 10 years in fashion. And if you actually go back, I think in maybe 20 years, when people are going to look back at the past hundreds years, you will know exactly what was fashion in 1910, 1920, 1930, 1940, 1950, 1960, 70, 80, 90. You can define precisely. Come up to 2000 and people would say, what was fashionable in 2000?
It was 60, 70, 80,
so,
90.
No, exactly. But what was it? It was branding. It's branding. It's everything and nothing, basically, right? There's no really trend. The trend stays 5 minutes.
The only trend that stayed in the last 10 years is the dress up, dress down thing, you know, blazer and denim, that type of thing. That is the only characteristic of our time.
But that was already there.
We have time for one mini question, and then we're being thrown out.
Very short. I have a question for Margherita. You decided to come back to the company by yourself, but you seem to have a lot of knowledge about the market, about fashion. What did you do before? Where did you learn? Was it in the company, or did you go see other brands, or did like fashion design study, or what did you do before?
Okay, I studied philosophy, and then I was acting. Okay. And I never worked for another brand, but I'm very passionate about this, and I'm very interested, and I'm very curious, and I think you have to be curious to do fashion. What she was saying before, that she was never a type to go to Studio 54, but she would, because she was curious to see what was happening, what people were doing, what they were wearing.
I was there.
But you were typing.
The mother.
And I was there.
Thank you.
Just watching.
She was no, but I just grew up in that. Every day of my life, I would go to the factory. I would listen. I would be a very quiet child, and I love hanging out with adults. I didn't like children, so I would just be quiet and listen to everything they said. So
Okay,
that's how I learned.
I think, are we in trouble, or am I allowed
And
one
wear
last
one
one?
boot of
Okay.
one color and the
Yeah.
other one.
Alonso says
When
okay.
you were 2 years old.
That's your first fashion memory of me.
Yeah, yes.
Can you all tell us a story about the pigeon you brought with you?
Oh yeah, I forgot your pigeon.
Oh,
Did we-
yeah.
oh, what's a pigeon? Exactly.
She's really scared of the pigeon. She didn't want to touch it. Her name
Joséphine
is
Pigeon.
Joséphine Pigeon. She's a plastic pigeon treated as human. She travels the world. She's very social. She has clothes by all the major couturiers. She has Maison Michel hats, Missoni capes, Giambattista Valli dresses. We met her in Burning Man 3 years ago. And
We who?
myself and my 2 friends. And so we share her. I have her for a while, and then, we'll FedEx her to each other. And we take her along, depending on who's doing the most interesting things. So she'd never been to a conference, so I took her along. She's been on many magazines. They wrote about her on the New York Times. She was in Harper's Bazaar. She was...
She has a name?
sorry?
She has a name?
Joséphine Pigeon. She goes as Jo P. But she doesn't like it too much because she's chicer than J Lo, and it sounds a bit the same. So she likes Joséphine a little better.
But she was away for kind
Yes.
of 1 year. She went away.
She's on Facebook, by the way. If you guys are, you can befriend her. She was,
My friend Anita wants to see her. You have to pick it up.
basically, she went to the Biennale in Venice.
She's more a dove than a pigeon.
No, she's a pigeon. She went to the Biennale and she kind of like lost it a bit because there are all these pigeons in Venice, and she was used to hanging out with humans, and so she partied too much, and we lost her. She completely disappeared. She just came back not too long ago. She'd been in rehab until 2 months ago.
She was in rehab.
I'm really sad she didn't make it to my wedding, but I'm glad she's back now.
And on that note,
Welcome
folks,
back.
I think we say goodnight.